The massive Nexian warship Stellaris hung against the backdrop of distant stars, its crystalline hull reflecting the cold light of space. In the ship's high-security detention block, Commander Zara Vex stood before a force field, her silver-scaled skin catching the harsh artificial light as she studied the human prisoner within. Captain Marcus Drake sat on the cell's narrow bench, his relaxed posture at odds with his dire situation. His dark eyes held an irritating gleam of amusement that made Zara's facial ridges twitch with annoyance. "For a primitive species, you display remarkable arrogance," Zara said, her translators converting her natural clicks and whistles into human speech. "Most prisoners show appropriate fear when facing Nexian justice." Marcus stretched, the movement deliberately casual. "Maybe your reputation isn't as scary as you think, Commander, or maybe humans just don't scare as easily as you're used to." Before Zara could respond, the ship shuddered violently. Emergency lights pulsed to life, bathing the detention block in waves of crimson. Marcus raised an eyebrow. That didn't sound like normal operations. "Silence," Zara snapped, but her attention was already divided. Her neural implant buzzed with fragmented data streams. Multiple systems were failing across the ship. Something was very wrong. The force field containing Marcus flickered ominously. His expression shifted from amusement to focused calculation, a change that made Zara reassess him. This wasn't the reaction of a frightened prisoner seeing an opportunity to escape. "Your ship's under attack," he said quietly. "But not from the outside. Those power fluctuations are following a pattern, someone systematically shutting down your systems from within." Zara's ridge crest flared in surprise. "How could you possibly?" "I was a ship captain before you captured me, remember?" Marcus stood, moving closer to the force field. "Your people may think humans are primitive, but we know ships, and right now your ship is being taken apart from the inside." Another violent tremor rocked the Stellaris. This time, the force field wavered for several seconds before stabilizing. Down the corridor, Zara heard the distinct sound of plasma weapons fire. "You have a choice, Commander," Marcus said, his voice level despite the chaos erupting around them. "You can stand there, secure in your beliefs about human inferiority, or you can accept that you might need help from someone who's seen this kind of takeover before." Zara's hand moved to her ceremonial blade, her mind racing through options. Everything in her training, her culture, her belief system told her that accepting help from a human was unthinkable. Yet something in Marcus's steady gaze spoke of experience, of capability. The decision was made for her when the ship's artificial gravity suddenly failed. As they both began to float, Marcus reacted with practiced ease, using the cell's bench to anchor himself. Zara noticed his movements were precise, efficient, nothing like the clumsy reactions she'd been taught to expect from humans. "Time's running out, Commander," Marcus said. "Whatever's happening on your ship, it's moving fast. You can either work with me, or we can both float here waiting to see if the next system to fail is life support." The sound of combat grew closer. Zara's ridge crest rippled with conflicting emotions before she made her decision. With a swift movement, she activated her override codes on the force field. "If you attempt to escape," she warned, "I will not hesitate to end you." Marcus pushed off the bench, moving through the zero gravity with surprising grace. "Noted, but right now I think we both have bigger problems than each other. Your ship's being stolen out from under you, Commander. The question is, by whom?" As if in answer, the ship's internal communications crackled to life, filling the detention block with a message that made Zara's blood run cold. The voice speaking was Nexian, but the words were those of revolution. The Purity Front, a radical faction believing in Nexian genetic supremacy, had finally made their move. "Well," Marcus said, catching the look of recognition in Zara's eyes, "I'm guessing that's not a scheduled maintenance announcement." The Stellaris shuddered again, and in that moment, Commander Zara Vex realized she was facing a truth her people had long denied. Sometimes survival meant accepting help from the most unlikely sources. Zero gravity made the Stellaris's corridors feel like underwater caves, with emergency lights casting wavering red shadows across the crystalline walls. Marcus Drake pushed off surfaces with calculated precision, while Commander Zara Vex used her neural implants to compensate for the lack of gravity. Engineering deck is 3 levels down, Zara said, her ridge crest rippling with agitation. If the Purity Front has control there, they can lock down every system on the ship. Marcus caught himself on a doorframe, scanning the corridor ahead. They'll have teams watching the main access routes, but I'm betting your people don't spend much time thinking about maintenance shafts. Those passages are barely large enough for maintenance drones, Zara objected, her silver scales reflecting the emergency lighting. A distant explosion rocked the ship, sending debris floating past them like deadly meteors. Marcus grabbed Zara's arm, pulling them both into a recessed doorway as superheated plasma scorched the corridor behind them. Right now, being overlooked is our best advantage, Marcus said. Unless you'd prefer a frontal assault against an entrenched enemy with superior positioning. Zara's facial ridges flattened, the Nexian equivalent of a frown. You sound experienced with insurgent tactics. Let's just say this isn't my first time moving through hostile territory, Marcus replied, pushing off the wall toward a maintenance access panel. Before you captured my ship, I spent 3 years running blockades to deliver supplies to colonies under siege. You learn to think creatively when the odds are stacked against you. Working quickly, Marcus bypassed the panel's security using techniques that made Zara's ridge crest rise in alarm. Those are restricted access codes, she said. How did you? You'd be surprised what humans can learn when you underestimate us long enough, Marcus answered, pulling the panel free. Ladies first. The maintenance shaft was indeed cramped, forcing them to move in single file through a maze of power conduits and life support systems. Marcus followed Zara's directions while offering his own insights on their route, demonstrating a grasp of ship architecture that repeatedly caught her off guard. Your understanding of our technology is unexpected, Zara admitted as they paused at a junction. The reports suggested humans were centuries behind Nexian advancement. Marcus checked a nearby system display, interpreting the Nexian symbols with ease. Maybe your reports need updating, or maybe humans are just better at adapting than you give us credit for. Engineering should be through the next section, but these readings suggest heavy weapon signatures ahead. Before Zara could respond, her neural implant buzzed with an incoming transmission. The message made her scales pale to a lighter shade of silver. The Purity Front has started executing command staff, she said, her voice tight with controlled rage. They're demanding the captain's surrender. What makes this Purity Front so sure they can take over? Even with control of key systems, they're still outnumbered by the loyal crew. Zara's expression darkened. They believe in Nexian genetic superiority so strongly that they view anyone who cooperates with other species as corrupted. Many of our people secretly share their views, even if they won't act on them. We can't trust anyone on this ship. Except me, Marcus said with a hint of irony, since I'm obviously not part of your species' internal politics. A series of explosions rocked the shaft, closer this time. Zara's neural implant flooded her with damage reports. The Purity Front was systematically destroying backup systems to prevent any possibility of recovery. We need weapons, Zara said, checking her ceremonial blade, impressive but impractical for the coming fight. Marcus gestured to a junction ahead. There's an armory access point 2 sections over. Standard Nexian protocol puts weapon caches near critical systems for emergency response teams. How do you know our protocols? Zara demanded. The same way I learned your language and tech, by paying attention instead of assuming I couldn't understand. Marcus met her gaze steadily. You want to know the real difference between humans and Nexians, Commander? You see limitations, we see possibilities. Another explosion interrupted them, this one close enough to make the shaft vibrate. But this time, it was accompanied by something worse, the distinctive hiss of atmosphere venting into space. They're getting desperate, Marcus said grimly. Starting to vent sections of the ship. How long until your hull integrity fails? Zara's neural implant ran calculations. At this rate of structural damage, less than an hour. Then we better move fast. Marcus pushed forward through the shaft. Because I didn't survive 3 years of running blockades just to die because some genetic purists can't handle a little diversity in the galaxy. As they moved toward the armory, Zara found herself reevaluating everything she thought she knew about humans. Their resourcefulness, their adaptability, their sheer determination in the face of overwhelming odds. Perhaps these weren't signs of primitive desperation as she'd been taught, but something else entirely. Something that might just help them save her ship, if she could learn to trust it. The armory access point yielded 2 Nexian pulse rifles and a cache of grenades. Marcus handled the alien weapons with unexpected familiarity, checking power cells and settings while Zara monitored enemy movements through her neural implant. Engineering's completely locked down, she reported, her ridge crest pulsing with agitation. The Purity Front has erected quantum barriers around the entire section. How many hostiles? Marcus asked, tossing her a rifle. At least 20 signatures, Zara's voice faltered. They've executed the engineering chief. First Officer Krell is leading them. Marcus paused in his preparations. Your first officer is part of this. He always seemed loyal. Zara's scales darkened with anger. But he spoke often about maintaining Nexian purity, about the dangers of cultural contamination from other species. The ship groaned around them as another section lost pressure. Through the walls, they could feel the vibrations of the mighty engines struggling under mismanagement. Marcus checked a nearby systems panel, his expression grim. They're redlining your reactor core, he said. Either they don't know what they're doing or they don't care about keeping the ship intact. That's impossible. Krell is a trained engineer. Which means this isn't about taking control of the ship. Marcus met her gaze. They're willing to destroy it rather than let it remain under contaminated leadership. Before Zara could respond, her neural implant crackled with a ship-wide transmission. First Officer Krell's voice filled the corridor, dripping with fanatic conviction. Attention crew of the Stellaris. For too long, our great empire has been weakened by compromise and cooperation with lesser species. Today, we cleanse this corruption. Any crew member who surrenders and pledges loyalty to the Purity Front will be spared. All others will be purged, along with the human filth that infests our ship. Marcus checked his weapon. Charming fellow, hard to believe you passed him over for promotion. The quantum barriers, Zara said, ignoring his quip. They'll have backup generators if we can't get through. We go under, Marcus interrupted. Your quantum barriers stop at the deck plating, right? Because you need to maintain access to power conduits and cooling systems. Zara's ridge crest lifted in surprise. The maintenance crawlways, but they're flooded with radiation when the engines are running. Then we better move fast. Marcus was already moving toward an access hatch. Unless you've got a better idea. The radiation-flooded crawlways were a maze of pulsing pipes and crackling energy conduits. Their environment suits provided some protection, but the radiation counters still climbed steadily as they moved. Marcus led the way, demonstrating an almost instinctive understanding of engineering layouts. 2 minutes until radiation exposure becomes critical, Zara warned, monitoring their suits' readings. Almost there, Marcus replied, his voice tight with concentration. Reactor control should be right above us. That's where they'll have their barrier generators. They reached a junction where multiple cooling pipes converged. Marcus studied the layout for a moment, then pointed to a section of deck plating. There, that panel leads directly into the reactor control room. It's magnetically sealed, Zara objected. Marcus pulled out one of the grenades they'd taken from the armory. Not for long, better shield your eyes. The explosion was contained but effective, turning the magnetic seals to slag. As emergency sirens wailed, Marcus and Zara burst through the opening into reactor control, directly behind the Purity Front's defensive positions. The firefight was brutal and brief. The fanatics had prepared for an assault through the main doors, never expecting an attack from below. Marcus and Zara moved with practiced coordination, as if they'd fought together for years instead of hours. When it was over, they stood among the fallen bodies of the reactor control team. Through the reinforced windows, they could see the main engineering bay where more Purity Front members were frantically working at control stations. "Krell's down there," Zara said, her scales rippling with barely contained fury. "He's trying to overload the containment fields." Marcus examined the reactor readings, his face illuminated by the pulsing red warning lights. "If those fields fail, the resulting explosion will take out half this sector of space." "Why?" Zara demanded, her composure finally cracking. "Why destroy everything we've built?" "Because fanatics would rather rule over ashes than share prosperity." Marcus was already moving to the control panels. "We can still stop this, but I'll need your help. I know ships, but these are your systems." Zara hesitated only a moment before joining him at the controls. As they worked together to prevent catastrophe, she realized something had fundamentally changed. She was no longer working with a primitive human out of necessity. She was fighting alongside an equal to save her ship, and somehow that didn't feel like surrender at all. Reactor control secured, Marcus and Zara surveyed the main engineering bay through reinforced windows. First Officer Krell stood at the central console, his silver-black scales marking him as part of Nexian nobility. Around him, Purity Front members worked with frantic determination. "The containment fields are stabilizing," Marcus said, studying the readouts. "But they've locked out the main computer core. We can't regain control of other ship systems from here." Zara's neural implant buzzed with encrypted transmissions. "Krell's sending orders to cells throughout the ship. More sections are falling to Purity Front control. Then we hit them now before they can consolidate their position." Marcus checked his weapons charge. "You know a way down there that doesn't involve walking through their front door." Zara's ridge crest rippled thoughtfully. "The emergency maintenance lift. It's designed for reactor component replacement, drops straight into engineering." She hesitated. "But Krell will expect that. He helped design this ship's security protocols." "Good." Marcus's grim smile caught her off guard. "Sometimes the best move is the one your enemy thinks is too obvious to try." They rode the maintenance lift in tense silence, weapons ready. Just before they reached engineering level, Marcus spoke quietly. "You served with Krell for years. Did you never suspect?" "I thought I knew him," Zara replied, her scales darkening with shame. "We fought together, defended our borders together, but now I wonder if every word, every action was just preparation for this moment." The lift doors opened to chaos. Alarms blared as engineering crews fought to contain cascade failures throughout the ship's systems. Krell stood at his command station like a statue of ancient Nexian war gods, his scales gleaming under the emergency lights. "Commander Vex," he called out, not turning around. "I wondered when you'd make your way here, though I must admit I didn't expect you to bring your pet human." "It's over, Krell," Zara said, her rifle trained on his back. "Step away from the console." Now Krell did turn, his expression one of almost paternal disappointment. "Over. My dear commander, this was never about one ship. The Stellaris is merely the beginning." "The beginning of what?" Marcus asked, though his tone suggested he already knew the answer. "Purification." Krell's eyes gleamed with zealous fire. "While you were crawling through maintenance tubes, my people were uploading a virus into every major system on this ship. A virus designed to spread through our entire defense network." Zara's ridge crest flattened in horror. "You're trying to take control of the whole fleet." "Not control, cleanse." Krell's smile was terrible to behold. "Every ship that's been modernized with alien technology, every crew that's been contaminated by foreign influence, all of it will be purged. The Nexian Empire will return to its true path." "Its true path?" Marcus's voice dripped with scorn. "You mean isolation, stagnation, watching the rest of the galaxy pass you by because you're too proud to learn from others." "Silence, human," Krell snarled. "Your kind are the worst of the corruption. You scramble in the dirt, stealing pieces of technology you barely understand, and yet you dare to think yourselves our equals." "We don't think we're your equals," Marcus replied calmly. "We know we're your future, Because while you're obsessing about genetic purity, we're out there adapting, learning, growing. That's why you're really doing this, isn't it? You're afraid. Krell's composure cracked. Afraid of primitives like you. Afraid because deep down you know he's right, Zara said, sudden understanding flooding her features. Every time a human ship outmaneuvers us, every time they solve a problem we couldn't, it terrifies you. Because it means everything you believe about Nexian superiority might be wrong. Enough, Krell's hand moved to a control panel. The virus is already spreading. In moments, it will reach the quantum communication network. Nothing can stop. The explosion caught everyone by surprise. A maintenance panel behind Krell burst open, and loyal engineering crew members poured through, led by a scorched but very much alive engineering chief. In the chaos that followed, Marcus tackled Krell away from the controls while Zara coordinated with the engineering team. "The virus," she shouted. "Can you stop it?" The engineering chief's hands flew over the console. "Not alone. The encryption is unlike anything I've seen. It's adapting faster than our countermeasures." "Then let's give it something it can't adapt to," Marcus called out, still grappling with Krell. "Human ingenuity and Nexian precision, together." Time seemed to crystallize in the Stellaris' engineering bay. Krell lay subdued but laughing, his zealot's certainty unshaken. The engineering chief worked frantically at the main console while emergency crews fought to contain the damage spreading through the ship systems. Marcus joined Zara at the virus control station, his eyes scanning the cascading data streams. "Your quantum networks, they're based on crystalline processors, right?" "Yes," Zara replied, her fingers flying over the controls. "The most advanced computing technology in known space." "And the most rigid," Marcus said. "That's your weakness. The virus is using that predictability against you." Understanding flashed across Zara's features. "You're suggesting we introduce chaos into the system." "Controlled chaos." Marcus pulled up the virus's code structure. "Look at the pattern. It's expecting Nexian responses, logical, ordered, perfect. So let's give it something it's never seen before." The engineering chief looked up from his console. "Human code? That's impossibly primitive. It would never interface with our systems." "Exactly," Marcus grinned. "Sometimes the best defense isn't a stronger wall, it's something so unexpected that the attack doesn't know how to process it." Krell's laughter turned to rage. "You would pollute our pure systems with human corruption. This is exactly what we're fighting against." "No," Zara said firmly, her ridge crest rising with determination. "This is what you're afraid of. Real strength isn't about remaining pure, it's about growing, adapting, becoming better than what you were." Working together, Marcus and Zara began weaving human programming protocols into the quantum network. It was like mixing oil and water, forcing two fundamentally different approaches to merge. The virus fought back, trying to adapt, but every time it established a pattern, they changed the rules. "It's working," the engineering chief reported, wonder in his voice. "The virus is losing coherence, but the quantum communications network, it's becoming unstable." "We need more power to maintain the merger," Marcus said, studying the readouts. "The human code is creating quantum fluctuations your systems weren't designed to handle." Zara's scales paled. "If we draw any more power, we risk a total system collapse." "Then we collapse it," Marcus said quietly. "Controlled shutdown and restart, flush everything." "That would leave us defenseless." "Sometimes you have to fall before you can rise stronger." Marcus met her gaze. "Trust me, Commander, like you've been trusting me all along." For a moment, Zara stood frozen between centuries of Nexian tradition and the wild uncertainty of change. Then, with a decisive motion, she entered her command codes. "All hands brace for total system shutdown," she announced shipwide. "Emergency power only." The Stellaris went dark. Throughout the massive vessel, every system, every quantum processor, every piece of advanced technology stopped. In the silence that followed, Krell's voice rang with despair. "You've killed us all. Without our technology, we're nothing." "No," Marcus said as emergency lights cast their dim glow. Without your technology, you're about to discover what you really are. The restart sequence was unlike anything in Nexian history. As systems came back online, they were different, a hybrid of Nexian precision and human adaptability. The virus, trying to re-establish itself, found no purchase in this new environment. Command network stabilizing, the engineering chief reported. Virus contamination, 0%, it's gone. Through the viewing ports, they could see the Stellaris's crystalline hull beginning to pulse with new life. But it was different now, less rigid, more organic, like a living thing adapting to change. You've corrupted everything, Krell spat. Centuries of Nexian advancement tainted by human chaos. No, Zara said, looking at the transformed systems with something like wonder. We've evolved, and thanks to you, the whole Empire will see that strength doesn't come from isolation, it comes from having the courage to change. She turned to Marcus, her ridge crest rippling with what might have been amusement. Though I suspect dealing with the Admiralty's reaction to this advancement will be interesting. Hey, if they give you trouble, just remind them that a primitive human helped save their fleet. Marcus smiled. Sometimes the best way to challenge prejudice is to prove it wrong. As emergency teams secured engineering and began coordinating repairs throughout the ship, Zara realized that more than systems had been transformed today. The Nexian Empire itself would never be the same. And perhaps, she thought, watching Marcus help coordinate repair efforts with a mix of human intuition and Nexian technology, that was exactly what they needed.